Good afternoon, crew, and welcome aboard. Today, we move forward from the galley age. I have already recorded an overview on the Barbary pirates and their use of the galley vessel. So today we shift to smaller, faster, more specialized craft built for attack, landing, patrol, and practical seamanship. Island countdown stop for today is Paradise Island in the Bahamas. Paradise Island is connected to Nassau by bridge and is known for its resort life, lively beaches, and beautiful water. One of its best known strands is Cabbage Beach, and it gives us a fine reminder that some islands are not just scenic, but full of boating atmosphere as well. Now to today's featured boats. First, the Italian MAS boat. MAS stands for Motoscafo Armato Silurante, which means Armed Torpedo Motorboat. The easiest way to say it is MAS, one syllable. In general, the MAS boats were fast, planing motor torpedo boats with crews of about 10 men, armed mainly with torpedoes and machine guns, and sometimes a light cannon. They were built for speed, surprise, and coastal action at a moment's notice. For the First World War, think of MAS 15, famous for helping sink the Austro-Hungarian battleship Szent István in 1918. A good, simple boat description for the MAS 15 is this: LOA, length overall, about 16 meters, beam or width, about 2.63 meters, draft, about 1.2 meter, crew, 8, armament, two 450 millimeter torpedoes plus light guns. The key lesson is simple. A very small boat can have a very large effect. For the Second World War, a good representation is the MAS 500 class. Length overall, about 18.7 meters, beam, about 4.7 meters, draft, about 1.5 meters, crew, roughly 9 to 13, armament, two 450 millimeter torpedoes, 6 to 10 depth charges, and a machine gun, often later replaced by a 20 millimeter Breda cannon. Top speed around 44 knots. These boats were fast attack, quick strike, and rapid withdrawal. Next, let's look into the Higgins boat, the famous LCVP, Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel. This is one of the great practical craft of the Second World War. It was built not for glamour, but to get men and equipment ashore. The standard Higgins LCVP was about length overall, 36 feet 3 inches, beam, 10 feet 10 inches, draft, 3 feet and 2 feet 2 inches forward, speed, about 12 knots, armament, two 30 caliber machine guns, crew, usually 3 to 4, capacity, about 36 troops or a jeep or a heavy cargo load. Now, a quick stop on the Coast Guard patrols in the Atlantic during World War II. The Coast Guard used civilian boats and yachts in what became known as the Corsair Fleet or Coastal Picket Force. These were not purpose-built warships. Many were volunteer sail or power boats, and they stood offshore patrols against the U-boat threat and in support of national defense along the coast. It is one of the more unusual and admirable wartime patrol stories. Next, a quick museum note for anyone building a future travel list. I wanted to have you think about the Mariners Museum and Park in Newport News, Virginia, which is a fine maritime stop and a remarkable bargain. If you have not been there, it deserves a place on your list. Now, downshifting, let's get into today's At the Helm challenge. I want us to keep building this game a little at a time. Today's challenge sits on one of the big limbs of our seamanship tree, which is boat handling and control. But to make the picture clearer, let me name a few of the other limbs as well. So, in other words, the analogy is a oak tree where the trunk represents seamanship and the limbs can represent areas such as navigation and piloting. Another limb for weather and sea state. Another for lines, anchoring, docking, and deck work. Another for safety and emergencies, and yet another for leadership, crew craft, and stewardship. So the game is starting to take shape. Again, the trunk is seamanship itself, and the limbs are the major subject families. And the leaves will be the actual challenge cards that you'll be confronted with. So here's today's self check. When you think about close control of a boat, where do you honestly place yourself? Do you know the basics? Can you explain them clearly? Can you do the job calmly? Can you adapt under pressure? And would you trust yourself with crew aboard? That is today's quick helm self assessment. And here are today's two C terms. And I want to show you their pictures on the screen. Pintle is on the right, and a pintle is the pin or pivot piece on a rudder fitting. Gudgeon, shown on the left, is the socket or strap fitting that receives the pintle. Together, pintle and gudgeon let a rudder hang, align, and turn. That is why they are such a good pair for our game. And pintle, again on the right, can represent the practical, mechanical, hands on side, whereas gudgeon, whose picture is on the left, can represent the judgment side, alignment, consequence, and steering thought. So that is today's course. We covered Paradise Island, the Italian MAS boats of two wars, the Higgins boat, the Coast Guard's Corsair fleet, the Mariners Museum, and one more step into our At the Helm challenge. So until next time, keep a weather eye open, keep your bearings, and I will see you at the next live briefing. Thanks so much. Phil Wilson signing off. Bye now.